Nothing you're about to hear should be taken as or used in place of medical advice. If you resemble anything you hear, contact your doctor. If you want to know what Walgreens thinks, ask them, because we don't know. Please wait behind the line for privacy.
You're listening to the Pharmacist Answers podcast. I'm Cynthia, the pharmacist, and today you'll get your questions answered and your curiosity cured.
Talk about the face, and there's specific organs on your face like your eyes and your nose and your mouth, and they do special things. But the thing that people worry the most about their face is their skin. So, and you have skin in more places obviously than just your face, but that's where we're going to start. We'll talk about all of the skin because that's the skin that people tend to care about the most, is the skin on their face. So we're just going to start basic with some basic anatomy and how everything's built and how it's all lined up and how it does the things that it does and why it seems to worry us so much. So you definitely have skin on your face. Different people's faces are different colors. They have different features, but your skin is essentially built all the same. Probably, when I start looking at it, there's probably going to be a lot of big words in this. But we're going to go through it easily, all together. We're not going to get all hung up in big words. So, and I'll draw you some more pictures. So, the basic buildup of your skin. Your skin is the largest organ on your body. And it is responsible for three main things. Your skin protects you. Your skin regulates you. And your skin helps you with sensations. Oh yes, fair skin, like borderline transparent. Yeah, no, I know that for sure. And as we're learning the importance of the skin and the damage that can be done to the skin and the fact that it can be irreparable sometimes, dark tan isn't as attractive as a society anymore as your natural skin tones and your natural complexion. So if you're a white girl, then you just be proud to be a white girl and you just blind everybody and it doesn't matter. Because that's more beautiful than you trying to get a tan and become a different color and then potentially damaging your skin. So your skin. This is the basic layers of your skin. The deepest layer in your body, well obviously the deepest layer is going to be like your bones, okay? So, but that's like on the inside. So your soft tissue, you've got your muscles. Be glad when you and your daughter learns that for herself. Yes, there's a lot of social pressures, and hopefully as a society they're kind of changing that mindset that your naturalness is beautiful. You don't have to have a tan to be beautiful. So the deepest muscle, the deepest layer of your soft tissue is your muscle. Okay. Has lots of blood flow, had its own systems. We'll talk about muscles later. So your skin has three layers here at the top. The top layer is the epidermis, and that's the part that we see. That's the part that determines what color your skin is. That's the layer that determines the softness and the moisture level of your skin. But that's the layer that gives you the most protection. One, because it's waterproof. So obviously you have to soak your skin in liquid for a really long time for the liquid to affect and soak through any of that layer of skin. It's essentially waterproof. But it is the layer that gives you your colors. And then there's so that's the epidermis, because that's the top. Dermis means skin, and the epidermis is the top skin. And then you've got your dermis, which is here in the middle. And this is where your nerve endings go. This is where your hair follicles start and grow. It's where your sweat glands travel through. And so that is a layer. It holds your glands, but it's also the layer that has all of your all of the proteins that because there's a border right here that's called the Dermis-Epidermis junction, and that junction is where your collagen and your elastin live in the majority of the time. And those are the two proteins in your skin that are the most concern when people start worrying about sagging skin and getting wrinkles and all of the things in our skin that people worry about trying to prevent the natural aging process of the skin is housed in that junction between the epidermis and the dermis. And so as you age and those proteins break down and they don't replenish as fast, then that's where the skin isn't as elastic and spongy anymore. And then the hypodermis is where the large amount of your skin blood flow is, and there's a lot of adipose tissue or fat tissue in there. And the fat tissue is what helps your skin. It gives you the insulation so that when your blood, which is warm, it keeps the warmth in and the cold out and vice versa. So the epidermis is obviously the layer that we see. That's the top layer. And it is made up of several layers, and because those layers are on top of that dermis-epidermis junction, so the proteins in our skin that we're the most concerned about protecting is that collagen and that elastin. Collagen more so because that's the one that you hear where you can get like facial creams and whatever that like actually have collagen to try to like put collagen back in your face. But collagen is one of those proteins in that junction that help, and elastin both. They work by keeping your skin springy and stretchy and allows it to bounce back from anything. Those are the proteins that we're trying to protect the most. And because your skin helps with protection, the epidermis has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers and a sixth, I guess. But you start with your muscle, and then there's the hypodermis. Go back here. There's the muscle. Then there's the hypodermis here that has all your blood vessels and your adipose fat tissue that give you the insulation. And then there's the dermis that houses your nerves and your glands and your hair follicles. And then the epidermis is on the top. So the dermis-epidermis junction here that's got all of our vital proteins that give the youthfulness to our skin. On top of that is a layer called the basement membrane. Now this is what I drew as a spread out version of what your epidermis looks like. So all of this fits in this tiny space up here, okay? Tanning beds, not good for your epidermis. Not good for the proteins in your skin in general. And I'll tell you why here in a second. So your basement membrane is just a fibrous proteins that makes a really solid foundation. So it's in the basement. And then there's the basal layer. The basal layer contains two types of cells. One is the keratinocytes, and so going back to the hair thing and the keratin, these guys are what create all of the keratin. And then this layer also has the melanocytes, which are the cells that make your melanin. And so proteins make up just about everything. And that's one of the interesting things, because we always hear about protein as like a food nutritional thing. But your body has the code to build all kinds of proteins that it needs. So the keratinocytes, they have the code to be able to build the protein keratin. And melanocytes, they have the code to be able to build the melanin proteins. So they're down here. So this is where your melanocytes are, right? That they give you the color. Well, that produce the color, okay? So this is the basal layer, this is the base. So this is where everybody starts. As the cells start to divide, so they like multiply their DNA and do all of that cell division stuff, then the cells end up getting more squished. They're not as organized because they've been multiplied and now there's more in a compact space. This is the spinous layer. Spinous because the cells end up kind of, are there things I can do to help boost those proteins? Not really. Now, Making sure that you have a decent amount of macro proteins, so proteins in your diet that your body breaks down to make amino acids, because all proteins are made of amino acids. So you eat protein from a source, your body breaks it down into the amino acids, and then puts those amino acids back into the proteins that your body actually makes. So we don't necessarily use straight up proteins. We don't use proteins straight from the source. So like I eat an animal protein and then like that protein gets directly incorporated into my body. No, my body breaks it down and uses the amino acids, those building blocks of proteins, that will then be built into the proteins that my body makes. So having a good source of protein, so then your body has an ample amount of amino acids for protein making, but then also the cells that are responsible for making those proteins, especially in your skin, it's important to protect them from things that can damage them. But going back to your hair thing, and we talked about the vitamins and how certain vitamins are antioxidants, you don't want the free radicals flowing through your body, which free radicals are usually just waste molecules from certain reactions that have a charge on it. So that charge is always looking for an opposite mate so it can like become neutral and back in the middle again. And the places that it likes to steal its charges from is like from your DNA. So from the codes that encode your genetic sequence and encode the code that is in the cells to build proteins. So if the code for the protein gets pieces stolen from it from free radicals, then the proteins aren't going to be made in the right way. So it's like this chain reaction, like it all connects together. Protecting the cells that build the proteins is probably one of the most important things to protect that code. So with your skin, you have two main types of cells that code for certain proteins, the keratin and the melanin. And so they multiply and they get scrunched together. This is called the spinous layer. And so this is where the cell says, okay, I am going to start making keratin, or I'm going to start making melanin. So these cells start using their code and making the proteins that they need to make. So then as they move up and get squished, they will get squished, and this is called the granular layer, because this is when the cells become more grainy than squishy. So that's the way I remember it, at least. So they become grainy because they're more full of the proteins that they're coded to make than all of the cellular liquid squishy stuff. So they make all of their proteins that they're designed to make and fill up. Does that mean I have a lot more melanin production in your skin? Yes. That means that you have more melanocytes in this bottom layer. So then as they multiply, then you have more cells in this layer that are designed and have a natural destiny to make melanin. Versus me, not that many. So they end up making so much of the protein that they're designed to make that they fill up and become more stiff and full of that protein. And then in these layers right here, that's when all of the organelles, which are the intercellular tools, mitochondria and ribosomes and blah, 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 and all the things, like you see the picture of a cell and it looks like a jacked up cookie pizza, and all of the things that are inside the cell that help it do its job, the proteins crowd them out, essentially. It makes so much protein that it crowds out all of the other things, so it essentially dies and becomes hardened with all of the proteins that it made. And so from here, this is called the stratum lucidum. The stratum lucidum, that stratum means layer. It's the lucid layer. Lucid means clear. Lucid is the Latin word for clear. So the keratin is clear, but the melanin is not. So if this layer is only full of cells with keratin, then it's going to be rather transparent, and you're going to be able to see all the way down through these cells and see it'll look pink because the blood and the muscle and stuff inside looks pink or red colored because of the blood. But because you have melanocytes down here that reproduce, and these guys make melanin, and then the melanin fills up the cells here, when those melanin filled cells move into the clear layer, it's not going to be exactly clear. So for Renee, our lovely Polynesian queen, this layer allows her skin to look more brown because she has more melanin. She has a higher concentration of melanin to show through the clear layer. And also in these layers is when the cells will produce what's called a hydrophobic layer, a hydrophobic coating. So the cell fills up with protein, it loses all of its little organelles inside because they got crowded out and had to find a different seat. And the cell will coat itself in a hydrophobic oil. That's why your skin is oily. And as they move up, that oil coats the layers here. So then the top layer, the stratum corneum, this is the hard layer. So this is the hard, dry layer that you can actually touch when you finally get up here. Oops, I just put my Fitbit to sleep. So this is the layer that gives you your color, and then this is the layer that is tightly packed together and dry that gives you your waterproof layer, essentially. So this layer gives you color, and because through this process they coat themselves with a hydrophobic meaning afraid of water, makes it waterproof. So you have a waterproof layer once it finally gets here. And so because these cells up here are completely dead and they're completely hard with protein and dry, as this process continues, as these cells multiply, and so this continues to move up and move up, these layers will shed off as it gets too thick. Plus, as they get abrased and beat up and all of that stuff, that's why the body continuously produces skin cells, because it knows that your top layer of skin, it does a lot of work for you. And that's why drinking water is so important, because you want the cells here to be as hydrated and healthy as possible, so when they move up here, then even though they're dry, they're not going to be like completely crusty. You don't want crusty skin. That's kind of... So back to the collagen and the elastin, which are responsible for making sure that we don't have wrinkles. When UV light travels through your skin, now remember, this layer is clear except for the melanin that's there. So I have less melanin. I have more clear than I have melanin. So when UV light travels through here and reaches this basement membrane, because this is protein and that's a little harder for it to travel through, these cells in here get tickled by the UV, and the melanocytes are the ones that go, warning, warning, UV, 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 warning, and they will increase their multiplication and produce more melanin. That's how white girls get tan, because my melanocytes freaked out and they made more melanin to fill up my clear layer to make it darker, because the more melanin here, then the more UV is going to hit it and bounce off. Make sense? Tracking with me? Renee, makes sense? So your lovely dark melanin that fills up this layer allows UV to hit and bounce away and hit and bounce away. Yes, you get darker, but you have less cell stimulation down here because your protection is already up here because you're naturally darker. Because if for whatever reason, if these cells don't absorb the UV light, it makes it through the protein, and then the protein's in the basement membrane, and then the proteins in this Dermis-Epidermis junction, which is your collagen and your elastin, get their brains beat out by UV light. And if they get beat up long enough, then they just say, we're not coming to play at your house anymore. And you don't have as much elastin and as much collagen, and that's why sun exposure in huge amounts, like tanning beds, can make your skin age faster, because you've offended those proteins in that nice elastic squishy layer, and they just be like, we're not hanging out with you anymore. So this is how your skin operates all over your body. Your face is usually the skin that people are the most worried about, because you're worried about wrinkles, or you're worried about dark circles. And even being young and into middle age, we're worried about acne. The skin on our face seems to be a place where we spend a lot of our focus. And so knowing how the layers of the skin work and what they do for you and which layers do what, then it allows us to make wiser decisions about the sun exposure that we get on our face and the rest of our body. It also allows you to know, because with the hydration, if you stay hydrated and your cells are all plumped up, then you're going to have plump, squishy, springy, elastic skin on your face. And so, am I going to cover blackheads and pimples? Yes, we'll talk about acne. And so, again, the 3 things that your skin does for you. Middle-age acne. Yeah, they tell you that it goes away, but I'm not convinced that it does. So your skin, it protects you. It protects you from UV light. It protects you from dirt. It protects you from bacteria. It helps regulate you. You have sweat glands that release moisture if you get hot. These layers in here, using some of the muscles in here, it actually knows how to move the blood vessel either closer to the surface or farther away from the surface based on the temperature outside or based on the temperature inside. So if you exercise and you warm up your body, then your body actually will very subtly move your blood vessels closer to the surface of your skin, so the hot blood in your skin can cool against the air outside. But then if it's really cold outside and you're not getting to move around very much, then your body will very subtly soak your blood vessels deeper down into the muscles, so the muscles can keep it warmer. That's why some people like me, when it gets really cold outside, get even more pale than I already am, because my blood vessels soak deeper away from the surface of my skin. And the reason you get pink tones to white skin is because of the blood color underneath. And so it helps regulate your temperature. It regulates your water. Have you heard the myth, the James Bond myth, about the girl that gets painted gold? In Goldfinger, when he comes in the room and finds her turned to gold in the bed. And the fact that there's a myth, and I think the Mythbusters did it. Yes, the Gold Lady. The Mythbusters on the Discovery Channel did a myth-busting episode about, they did a bunch of James Bond myths, and they did the Gold Lady. And they painted themselves in gold paint as close to what they could get to match what they had used in that movie of James Bond. And the myth is that they had to leave like a certain size square on her back unpainted that wasn't going to be in the shot in the movie, because if they had covered all of her skin, she would have suffocated. And so the Mythbusters did this. They had all of the health professionals there and all of this stuff. And so they painted themselves, followed the myth, left the square unpainted on their body, and then they walked on a treadmill. And they had these EMS guys that measured all of their vital signs. So they were checking their pulse, they were checking their breathing rate, they were checking their pulse ox, which is the amount of oxygen in your blood. They were checking their blood pressure.
And they had all these precautions set up, thinking something really bad was going to happen. But in the end, the Mythbusters ended up busting this myth that even though they were covered in the latex paint, their body was not suffocating. But before then, it was widely believed that would happen. If you covered your skin up, you would suffocate. Now, it's probably more likely that you would have a heat stroke because your body can't regulate temperature and release sweat that helps regulate your body temperature, but you're not going to suffocate. So they were able to use James Bond and Goldfinger to disprove that belief.
And then the third thing is it helps with your sensations. It's where all your nerves are. It allows you to touch things and feel things. And your skin sensations are really, really specific. When you can take two smooth plastic things that look identical, but your skin sensations are able to tell really, really, really teeny tiny differences in the two things that to your eyes you would think were exactly the same. So your skin, it does really cool things for you. That's one of the reasons why it's important for us to protect it. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmacist Answers podcast. The pharmacy is now closed. You can post your questions and comments on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/pharmanswerspod. Or you can email the show at pharmacistanswershere@gmail.com. You can tweet me or message me on Twitter @SinHendrix. You can find the show notes at pharmacistanswershere.wordpress.com. Pharmacist Answers broadcasts live on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9:02 a.m. Eastern Time on the Periscope app. You can follow me @SinHendrix or view in your web browser at periscope.tv/SinHendrix. See you next time on the Pharmacist Answers podcast.